Now, this is not in any way, shape, or form a commentary on that kind of choice. It is simply saying that nothing goes to waste, and in that sense, it all serves some spirit's purpose. So in that sense, doesn't need to be looked at in any kind of a judgmental way. It is simply a choice, a circumstance, and an opportunity that is taken advantage of by those it can serve. Now, as you further crystallize the embryonic form, and it starts to set up cellular structures and neurological pathways in the physical body that are representative of the kind of themes you will explore, what it also starts to create is the personality construct. The representation of the intelligence of the spirit, the consciousness of the spirit, will in a sense be mocked up in the body. It will have a template form of its own that is represented by the capacity for belief systems, emotions, and thought patterns and actions. This prismatic template in the brain is set up to receive certain kinds of information that are conducive to the expression of that spirit's choice of thematic experiences. Thus, that personality becomes uniquely fixed and uniquely capable of expressing itself along the lines specifically of the themes that were chosen for exploration. This is not to say that the personality cannot be malleable, for it is, but the idea is that it is specifically designed to absorb information that is along the lines of the chosen themes. Now, of course, when a child on your planet is born to its parents, it will, because it is still absorbing, still laying the foundations of that template, still crystallizing for a while, it will absorb all of the telepathic input of the parents, of the society. And as it locks into that, it will pick up on belief systems from the parents, from society, and begin to incorporate those into its matrix as well. Oftentimes, both belief systems that are conducive to its thematic exploration and belief systems that are not necessarily conducive to its thematic exploration, except as belief systems that give the child an opportunity to later determine that it has a comparison to make between belief systems picked up from others that don't belong to it and what belief systems it would prefer. Again, all the absorption serves a purpose, but some of the belief systems may not necessarily ultimately be conducive to what that personality's choices are, but it is still part of the theme of exploration to have picked up those belief systems from your parents and from your society in order to later decide more clearly, based on your comparison of self to those belief systems, who you are and who you are not, because that's a part of the experience generally that you explore in physical reality to define yourselves and to go from the idea of limitation to less limitation, to go from the idea of forgetting to remembering, to go from the idea of pulling yourself together as a holistic being, having gone through the idea of separation and segregation within your consciousness. So it all serves a purpose. Even though you will divest yourself of certain belief systems as you grow, they still served a purpose of being there because they gave you something to compare the ideal self against and gave you a measure of where you're going. So in that context, all of your parents have served you, even though they may not have known how they were doing it or what they were doing, even though they might have been, if within their own integrity, more capable of expressing the idea of love to you in a more positive way. Nevertheless, because they may have had their own fears, their own doubts, their own issues of exploration that may never have been resolved for them, they still handed down to you those things that still give you the opportunity to decide more concretely who you are, even if only by recognizing through what they have given you who you are not. So it still serves all of you in that way if you are willing to use it that way. Now, this brings us to the idea of the personality structure, the physical mind, and its relationship to higher self. Let us now rewind this, go back a little bit to where you first were forming from spirit that template reality. Aside from the mechanism we have now described of forming the physical side of the personality, the physical side of the person you will be in physical reality experience, at the same time, when you lay out that template, you also, from spirit, create a duality. You create not only the physical side, the physical mind, but you create the template called the higher mind that goes specifically with that person. So every person is a person in totality when they express the idea of physical mind and higher mind. That is what makes you a whole person capable of exploring the idea of physical reality. Above that level, what you might call soul or spirit, it isn't broken out in that way. It is mostly the experience of what you would simply call higher mind, but it is not the same exact experience of higher mind, not the higher mind template that is formed to go hand in hand with the physical persona. But the higher mind template that is formed by the spirit acts as the liaison between the physical mind and the higher levels of your own soul. And so it remains to a great degree in the template level reality. Again, it is, by analogy, the individual still standing on the boat helping the diver who has gone down below, making sure that they are given every support that they need, making sure they are still in communication, and helping to guide them from the surface in any way that they can by taking readings of what's going on around them and helping them in their exploration down below. So higher mind stays on the boat, physical mind goes deep sea diving. Now, once this relationship is established, then the idea is to get these two to work in concert, to get the physical mind and the higher mind to work in concert. Now, because your view deep, deep, deep under the ocean is limited, as it is when you go as a spirit deep, deep, deep into physical reality, the idea is to rely on the higher mind, the person on the boat, to be able to guide you to the horizon because they can see farther than you can. The deeper you go in the ocean, the darker it gets, the murkier it gets, the less visibility you have. The deeper you go into physical reality, the more limited your point of view can be. But you can always rely on the fact that the higher mind, still up there on the surface on the boat, can see clearly to the horizon and can, with the proper communication, guide the diver in the proper direction. So the idea then is to recognize that because you will experience a kind of disconnection from the surface, disconnection from the higher realm, it is important to rely on the communications of the higher mind for guidance. However, the paradox is that very often, not so much that it has to be this way anymore in your reality, but especially in your history, diving deeply into physical reality has created the kind of disconnection and the kind of forgetfulness and the kind of limitation that allows you to not even remember you have had a higher mind. And therefore, you have created within yourselves, nevertheless, as part of your template, an urging within the physical persona to seek the higher mind. Because the higher mind knows, and the spirit knew when it formed the template, that it was highly likely the physical persona might get lost in the darkness. So it always gave the physical persona that one seed, that one spark, that urge to go toward the idea of the light, to go toward the idea of the higher mind, and to form that reconnection. This is expressed as the creative desire, the desire for love. That is what that is. The feeling of desiring love, the feeling of love, the desire to express oneself fully, creatively, in that sense, is different ways of experiencing the seed that is created in the template that urges you back in that direction, urges you to reconnect with the higher self. Now, again, because of the degree of disconnection experience and the degree of forgetfulness that exists in the idea of physical reality, we understand that even that can sometimes be distorted, be clouded, be filtered. Nevertheless, the urge is there. It is always driving you to look for that which allows you to feel complete. And in many ways, when many of you are looking for things to allow you to feel complete, that's actually what you're looking for. You're looking for your connection to the higher mind, to reconnect, to form that relationship with the higher mind. We understand that many of you may, because of the forgetfulness, because of the filtration, because of the disconnection, because of the distortion, you may interpret the idea of that which you need for completion in a variety of different ways. Some individuals will feel that desire for completion by expressing it through the need for another person or the need for sustaining oneself with food or many other things. This idea, however, is all predicated on the notion that what you're actually looking for is that reconnection to the higher self. This is not to say it cannot be expressed in a number of ways, or that those things cannot to some degree represent part of the path of reclaiming that connection. But very often, because of the forgetfulness, the physical mind and the ego structure may assume that the thing that in some sense is on one level representative of that reconnection is the reconnection itself, and it is all that is needed for the reconnection, and it often stops you short of making the reconnection, because then you become fixated on the symbol of the reconnection rather than the reconnection itself. Now, the idea of the ego structure is basically this. It is simply for the purpose, its really only job is simply for the purpose of keeping you focused as a physical personality in your physical reality experience. That's its job. It's just to focus you in physical reality. Ego, in a sense, is like the diving mask that gives you the ability to have a clear view underwater, so that things are not too murky, so that you can see, sort of, at least to some degree, what is ahead of you, where you are going. It brings things of the physical reality into focus so that you can concentrate on them, so you can focus on them, so you can have a physical reality experience. It creates the idea and reinforces the idea of the belief systems that are part and parcel of the template of your consciousness, of your personality structure that you have created, reinforces them so that those beliefs can be experienced as fully as possible. That's why every single belief is self-reinforcing. Because the ego's job is to add energy to it, add focus to that belief, to make it seem as if no other belief is possible, in order for you to focus on the belief strongly enough to actually have the physicalized manifestation and the experience that goes hand in hand with that particular belief you are holding to be true at any given moment. So the ego's job is to amplify those beliefs, to keep you focused in physical reality, to keep you focused in that experience. But when there is a degree of forgetting that exists to the extent that it has in your reality, very often, because of that sense of disconnection, because of that experience of disconnection, not that you're ever really disconnected, because you cannot be, but you can create the experience of disconnection to such a degree that the physical personality structure, the ego structure, can forget that it's not actually the one in charge, can forget that it has a helpmate in the template reality called the higher mind, can forget that it is not doing this alone. And in suddenly finding itself in the experience of being alone, it starts to build up the idea of fear.